Welcome to another episode of Smoke World. I'm your host, Stone. So go grab that stick, go grab a glass, whatever you're going to be drinking. Let's sit back and have a conversation. You can follow me on Instagram at SmokeWorld50. You can send those emails to SmokeWorld50@gmail.com. This episode, we take a turn. I'm joined by my brothers of the Leaf. I will introduce them. We'll be talking about old school hip hop. That's right. On Smoke World, we're talking about old school hip hop. I'm joined by my brother Mark, my brother V, my brother Vince. We're going to start some discussion, go around the table. What's up, Mark? How you feel? What's going on with you, brother?
It's great. Everything's love, brother. Everything's love.
That's what's up, brother V. What's going on, man?
Man, no complaints, brother. Doing well.
Vince, what's the deal, brother?
I'm happy to be here.
All right, fellas, like I told y'all earlier, man, you know, we're going to talk about some old school hip hop. I'm not going to say I'm not knowledgeable, but I'm sitting around a great wealth of knowledgeable brothers who know their stuff. And we're going to start you off with Brother Mark, because Mark's actually an artist who's a cat who does a few things lyrically. He's a little shy with that, I don't know why, but I heard a couple of his things, and he got some hot stuff, brother. He got some fire jumping on. What's up, man? Brother. Yeah, so, you know, I mean, let's just sit back, relax, and, you know, let's have a conversation. Anybody can start this thing off, see where we at. I'm going to let Mark run it off because Mark seems to be the one with the knowledge here, and Brother Vince. So, you know, me and V, we looking like, yo, what's up?
I'm laying in the cut. I'm laying in the cut.
Yeah,
I'm a fan.
I'm a fan. V tried to hide out and hide on the drums, but we weren't going to let that happen.
Nah.
So I would say when we're talking about old school hip hop, right, I think it's key to kind of hone in on what era you consider to be old school hip hop, right? So I might be a little younger than others, but I still, I ain't throwing no shots.
I had a rough paper route. I had a lot of dog chasing me, man. Come on, man.
No, but I think, and speaking of Vince prior to the podcast, you know, I think everyone in the room understands old school hip hop is the first generation of hip hop. Now, while I may understand that to be, that's not what I consider to be old school hip hop, is because what I came up on as far as old school was probably second and third generation, you know, old school hip hop. So I'm gonna let y'all start at the essence, and I'm gonna come in afterwards.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. I'm 53 years old.
Damn, bro,
And
you know.
Yeah. No. I'm still chilling. But I grew up in New York, and I grew up mostly listening to disco, reggae, salsa, merengue. That's what I primarily listen to. And I would say, like in '77, when I would go to my mother's house in Queens on the weekends, because I didn't live with her, especially in the summertime, they would have parties in the park or at the playground of the school, PS 135 and 109. And these guys will go out there with their equipment being turntables and mixers and stuff like that, and they would set up on a table with everything, and they would get extension cords, a screwdriver, unplug the plate off of a street light, splice the wires, and hook the power in. Okay? And then you heard that lyric, KRS-One said, power from the street light made the place dark. What he was referring to was what the DJs were doing back then. And they would hook it up into that street light. All the street lights on that side would go dark. And they would have a little fish tank light set up over the turntables. Because I used to sit on the slide and watch the DJs. Yeah, my brother was a crate boy. So my brother, Bobby, he would come along with the DJs, and he would haul the crates back and forth. And sometimes he would stand there. And a lot of times the crate boys would be the ones where the DJ turned around, I need this, I need that. And they would go in there and they would thumb through and find the records. Okay? So at that time, it was all about mixing the records and keeping the crowd moving. It went from that to the DJ playing music. And I seen him, again, I saw this personally. The DJ was like, he got on the mic and he said, me and Tarzan was swinging from a vine. And when he was swinging, he said, and he let good times, and he let that go. Okay? So, and then he would, you know, it went from the little bit of rhymes that the DJ would do to Now you had somebody who would take over and do the MC. So my experience with it goes back then.
Okay.
And it didn't have a name, hip hop. They were still referring to it as disco.
Oh, disco, really?
Disco.
Okay.
Okay.
Because back then it was really about the DJs, right?
Right.
It wasn't about the it wasn't
But
so much about the MC. It was about the DJ.
DJ was the show.
Right. The DJ
Right.
was the one who was keeping that party going.
Right.
He set the tone.
Right.
But they would, they would actually say disco, disco, but because they would be doing breaks off of a disco beat.
Off a disco track.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So it eventually evolved from that. To where you see where it is when you come to the second generation where I got a Run DMC shirt on because this is when I was really coming of age when this was out. But when I was younger, I'd be listening to radio stations 2-3 o'clock in the morning and listening to guys.
With your cassette. yeah, with your cassette. You were trying to get that. You were trying to
know what?
You don't know about that. You don't know about that.
I was
cassette.
saying-
No, I had the Walkman on deck, bro. I might not be on the 8
And
track.
that thing on pause. Yeah, that thing on pause. And then come on, you hit that thing. Ah!
But I started with we had the rack stereo system that my father had with 8 tracks, and I figured out that you could actually record on an 8 track in that system. So I have 8 tracks in the house.
I know you
That I
did.
brought home.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we heard about
Back.
now, folks. Man, not to interrupt the brother because he's writing about a good story. You say you got 8 tracks in the house.
Yes.
Rumor has it on the street
here
that
we
you have a whole memorial set up for old school hip hop. Is this true?
Yes, I have in my room. I have a representation of the elements of hip hop. That is to say that on one wall I have my books. I have books. I have
Okay.
books about hip hop. I have books about graffiti. Okay. I have a graffiti artist. She made a little thing from a little picture. And I
Okay.
have that posted up. Then on this wall here, I have it dedicated to Run DMC. So I have Run DMC albums, things I've had Run DMC assigned. I have a Lasonic 23-pound boombox sitting up there.
Damn.
Okay.
How many batteries that take? You remember how many batteries?
It was
About
like
8 Ds.
No, that's like 14. Only 8?
batteries.
Only 8.
2, 4, 8, 2,
Not
4,
10 to
6,
12?
8. Well, depending, because you getting them sharp GF 777s, yeah. But with the that was the one with the double cassette and the 4 speakers going across.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that was a sharp. But I got the Lasonic, and then on the other side, then I got my Treacherous 3, and Grandmaster Flash, and then I have everybody else, the Fat Boys, and
This
Rob
cat,
Bass and all
listen,
that.
folks. Y'all listening to
The
this?
museum.
This is serious.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, hold
yeah,
on.
no,
He got a
no,
hip-hop- he got a hip-hop museum in the crib.
But tell them about your office and your work area. your
Okay,
office.
all right. Okay, so in my office at work, now mind you, where I work and who I work for, is you would not expect this to be in the office. So I'm not gonna say where I work, but you trust me, you would not expect it. But in
People
my
have degrees and certificates and things of that nature.
In my-
And he's saying he got Run DMC posters and hip hop stuff all in the queue. I'm like, yo, man,
They'll
they gonna
kick you
fire
out.
you.
Yeah, exactly.
You ain't gonna be here much longer.
That's what's up.
but you got to do your job.
Stay true to oneself, brother. I'm with that all day, all night.
No, look, that's why I got a beef with my man. Oh my gosh, what's that guy's name? Rick Ross, man. I get into that. But one side of my cubicle is all Sugar Hill labels,
Okay.
albums, and they're real. People, is that a real album in it? Yes, it is. And I'll put. But everybody on the Sugar Hill, I have about 16 to 20 of them neatly on the cubicle wall. Then the other side, facing this way, is a whole bunch of profiles. So it's Run DMC, it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and a mix of others, all right on that side. Okay, because this is who I was. I used to break dance. Specifically, I used to pop, electric boogie. That was my thing. I would travel
Pop
around
lock.
and do that. Okay, pop lock too.
Well, we had to battle before this
I
is
would
all
do
over.
that. Look, man, I just had my wedding reception, man. My back was sore for 2 or 3 days, man. I'm just,
Get them Advils, brother. We're going to go into battle.
but I have that, and then I have, so I have that. So when I say I have these things and I have graffiti, I have in my car because I didn't know what to expect here.
Right.
I got my car, my graffiti jacket from when I was in 11th grade. along with my brass belt buckle.
Oh, you got your
Original.
name?
It's the original. It's not the plastic. Now,
Dang.
you want me to go get it? I'll bring it
Vince
in.
said he ain't new to this. He true to this, baby.
We're gonna take some pictures of all that.
All right, okay.
And post those.
It's in the car, but that's where I come from.
Okay.
Okay. So and so then I just travel with it and progress with it. So I would say I'm first generation. Talking WHBI radio, Spectrum City rappers who turned into Public Enemy. Flavor and all. Flavor can't have Reed, and Flavor was like the number 3 man because Butch Cassidy was next to Chuck. And for some reason, Butch Cassidy didn't make it when they came out with the album. He kind of fell off, and Flavor was put in that position. I never understood why, but there's a guy named Butch Cassidy out there in New York somewhere, and he was way better than Flavor. But that was just my experience. So I'm just saying,
Oh, that's what's up. Now that's a little bit of history right there.
Yeah,
Definitely.
no doubt.
I think that's a blessing for a hip hop head to have been able to experience that at a young age and experience the essence of hip hop. And I think that's probably 100% of the reason why you still uphold, the essence of hip hop when, in a genre where a lot of it's forgotten. That's awesome. That's an awesome, situation, an awesome experience to have. For me personally, I grew up in the church. My father was a pastor for 40 years. I grew up in a pretty rough area in Newport News, Virginia. That's produced the likes of, quite a few big names, like your Allen Iversons, your Michael Vicks. And if you notice, everyone from Newport News has something going on with them, right?
Yeah.
But I came up with a good upbringing, but I have an older brother who originally turned me on to hip hop. And like, as a lyricist myself, I have lyrics where, speaking true to self, like stole my brother's Walkman, bumping Grand Poobah, hiding in the closet, because that was me, and that was my first, taste of it. And I was like, what's this? This is amazing, And going from there, I think it really all came to fruition when I first heard of Wu-Tang. And,
okay.
And while Wu-Tang is so far removed from first generation hip hop, at the same time, that's what was the catalyst for me to, pursue, to find out more of what's going on in this hip hop thing and what they call hip hop. And from there, I really wanted to do my research. So that's why, as a 36-year-old, I recognize the names you're talking about. I know the forefathers. When a lot of artists to this day who are mainstream artists probably couldn't hold a conversation, regarding, your Scholar Rocks, your Grandmaster Flash, Grandmaster Cass, people like that. But I fell in love with the lyricism piece, right? So we were talking about this prior to the podcast, but one of the first people I really respected listening to the old school was KRS, Knowledge Reigns Supreme, because of the lyrical content. And I'm as a poet, as a lyricist myself, I really respected KRS-One just because of how high he took it. He pushed it to another level. And lots of the people I idolize as, lyricists, are of that same cloth. So even to this day, there are people that you can listen to, and lots of people say, there's no more rap anymore. Hip hop is dead. I think that was a title of Nas's album a while ago, right? But hip hop is very much alive when you look at, your younger generation of conscious rappers, your J. Cole's, your Kendricks, who are not just really trying to make people move, but also speaking about social injustice, speaking about things that are going on in this time right now that really, are not getting the light shined on them that they should. So as of right now, I feel like hip hop's in a good state, but coming up, it was Wu-Tang for me. I love,
Wu-Tang Clan,
it was Sons of Man, it was Boot Camp Click, rest in peace, Sean Price. It was Grave Diggers, and I know these. Yeah, see, so see, it transcends. But I think the one thing is that, people from my generation, people who came up on late '80s and early '90s hip hop, they still understood the essence of where it came from. They can still speak on the fact that, it wasn't always about the lyricists. It was about the graffiti artists. It was about the breakdancers. It was about the DJs. It was about a movement, to keep people doing something positive in their own neighborhood, and nowadays it seems like the hip hop is so far removed from that, And lots of your artists now who are making millions of dollars in hip hop probably couldn't recite a lyric from somebody who wrote rhymes in the 80s or the early 90s. And I think
and I don't
sad.
think that they say the same type of lyrics. You know, what's different is now when I look at and I listen to hip hop now is that the difference is there are a few, and you mentioned them, Kendrick Lamar and a few others that can really sit down and put lyrics together that speak to some of the issues that are taking place right now and social issues. And what disappoints me now with the hip hop, and I came up at the same time as Vince, man, and here in Delaware. And what disappoints me now is, man, that, you know, all of the rap now seems to be, a lot of the rap that I hear and that these young people listen to, it doesn't seem to have that positive message.
Right.
And I understand that everybody has a story to tell. But somebody, and they say, well, I'm reciting what I see and what I see, you know, what I've experienced. But man, you know, the great thing about creativity is, if you're a creative person, it can take you to places that you never
Outside
go.
of your norm.
You know, and so why not talk about those things? Why not intermingle some of that with some of the other things that you're saying? Because I get upset about it, and me and my daughter, my youngest daughter, we go back and forth, you know, about this stuff, and I try to tell her that, you know, when I listen to the MCs, if you want to call them MCs today, they can't hold a match when it comes to lyrical content to some of the old schools. And like I said, we could talk about Rakim, you talk about KRS, you could talk about so many more that when they put lyrics together, man, you just sitting back like, oh my God. Yeah. I mean, where did that come from? Big Daddy Kane. How do you make every single word rhyme? You know, I mean, and spit it the way you spit it. It's unbelievable. But it was about, you know, a lot of the lyrics back then, man, they were inspirational. It wasn't anything they were talking about negativity. You know, it back in our day when rap first came on the scene, it was about just bragging and boasting about yourself. Yeah. You know what I mean? You know, who was the baddest on the mic? Who can rock this mic,
that's
man?
what called battles.
And now it's gotten to the point, man, where, you know, a lot of these rappers now, man, it's just like, no, come on, man, give me something more than this. Everybody can't be rapping about the same thing, and you're not saying nothing.
Or they're mumbling.
Yeah, or they're mumbling. You know,
I know we're kind of out of that phase now of the mumble rapper for a while, man.
It's like, man, what are they saying? Yeah, what are they saying?
Oh my
God!
God!
You know, you know, it's crazy, man. But you know, I look at it. I love hip hop, but I love the old school hip hop, man. I love the EPMD, the Big Daddy Kane. Yeah. You know, hey, look, listen, man. You know, I mean, you know, Run and all them back and going back even further, the Crash Crew. You know, the Crash Crew, man. I mean, these were some these were rap gods, man. All of them, man. But you know, I look at it nowadays, man, and I'm really disappointed and disappointed by a lot of the things that I hear, you know, that's coming out of there. Because, you know, as I say all the time, man, you know, when we were coming up and we were listening to hip hop influenced you. Mm-hmm. You know, it made you decide what you wanted to do and how you wanted to dress, how you wanted to talk, what you wanted to, and so when we were listening to Running Them, the biggest thing was I wanted to get my job making $3.35 an hour at McDonald's, and I was working my butt off so that I can get me an Adidas sweatsuit and some shell top, and some shell top Adidas. That's what I wanted. But now you look at what are they striving for now? When you listen to a lot of the lyrical content that's taking place in the music today, you hear a lot of them talking about, man, they talk about, you know, trying to be pimps, and they're trying to be drug dealers and shooting and killing. And now we wonder why we see so much of this violence taking place, man. Mm. Because a lot of these young people actually believe the stuff that these guys are saying. Let me tell you something, man. Cats like 50 Cent and all them, they can talk all that stuff they want. This man ain't out there in the streets hustling. You know, Jay-Z ain't out in the street hustling, but they still write the lyrics.
Tell you that.
You still write the lyrics, but you're not doing that.
But you don't have to do that to be a good artist. And you know, you can still be a good artist and don't have to go on that or to go into the negativity. And
Hey Vince, Vince gonna stop knocking on the table. He one of them black
I'm
guys
sorry.
gotta keep banging the table.
But, and look,
He's supporting Malcolm X right now. Boom, boom.
to that point, right?
Yeah.
To that point, as an artist, as someone that calls himself an artist, right? Art is supposed to come from an organic place, right? So, I'm gonna take Jay-Z as an example, right? If you look at Jay-Z's first albums, and I'm just gonna say his first albums, right? A lot of it was negative, right? A lot of it was about what he was experiencing at the time. Now, if Jay-Z currently, the almost billionaire that we know to be a hip hop mogul, was still rapping about that, then we would know that that art is forced. That's not real. That's not actuality, because that's not where he is. And his art has transcended over the years to the point where it's palatable for all people,
Everybody.
right?
Okay.
But when you're looking at an artist that's just overly negative and that's what they are, then that's a different story. Now, if they're in that same predicament, then that's one thing. But obviously, if you're in the same predicament, you probably haven't made it as a mainstream artist, because money changes things, right? But I want to go back to what you were saying as far as, the music currently. And one of the things I agree with you wholeheartedly. What you're hearing right now, there's not a lot of substance, right? It doesn't mean that there's not a lot of substance in hip hop currently. There's
no,
new artists.
no.
It's just you have to look at the machine behind the music, right?
I agree.
So this is a business, right? And oftentimes control of a demographic of people that don't have our best interests at heart, right? So they want to hear whatever's selling, whatever the trend is. They want to hear shoot 'em up, drink lean, pimp females, do whatever. They want to hear that because systemically, that's serving them a purpose while padding their wallet at the same time, right? But hip-hop is still in a good state because it's the first time where an artist who sees that and realizes, like, so for instance, when we talked about your Kendrick Lamar, right? And we'll just use him as an example, right? Kendrick never really wanted to go major, right? Kendrick, I was in Kendrick shows when probably 80% of the population didn't know who Kendrick Lamar was. And I'm talking a crowd of 500 people, and it's like intimate, face to face kind of. And I like finding art like that where it's untouched by commercialization, right? There's no marketing in it. Now, granted, the whole purpose of it is to make money. It's a business, but at the same time, when your art is the thing that sells, and it's not a record exec saying, "Hey, come here. We like this. This is what's hot right now." That's not art. That's just you conforming to whatever the machine wants you to conform to. So it's rare because right now there's so much money out there for the next hit song. They don't care about what it's saying. They don't care about that. They just want something that makes people's heads move. Kind of like back to the essence of hip hop. It was the DJ trying to keep the crowd engaged. And right now the crowd is engaged by a lot of Snap. I remember when I was in college, it was Snap, D4L, white T-shirt boys, which was all garbage. It was garbage, but it had an audience.
When was that? Around 98?
So I graduated A&T in 06.
Okay.
Mm.
So
It's a good point.
I would say that the pinnacle of what you're saying as far as the machine is concerned, I would say that would be representative of like Cardi B with this song WAP.
Okay.
All right, because to me,
I don't even know that song.
I like her,
Some people are old.
but I don't want my daughter
At all.
doing what
100%.
she's saying
That's
for,
facts.
for everybody to do. Okay,
Facts.
I don't want my daughter to idolize her, and in that regard. Okay, now that song, I like it like that. Okay, I can go. Okay, it's nice, and I play it in the car and laugh and joke. But this song that's out now,
Yeah.
I don't want my daughter having nothing to do with that.
But I would never want my daughter to listen to Hardcore by Lil' Kim. And that was over a decade ago,
And
right?
I think Little Kim missed out a lot because Little Kim was in a position where, at the time, she's out. Now we got this East Coast West Coast war going on, which was garbage. But we have everything that she was cranking out. They were playing on the radio. The problem is, I couldn't be an artist and have my songs tampered with.
You're not an artist then.
She cursed so much. They would put little cartoon sound effects over her lyrics that were over the curse words. it really bothered me because I wanted to hear what she was saying. But there's, little, it's just, it's a sound effect. It's a this. They're trying to get rid of the curse word. Where's the clean version so we can play that on the radio? They won't do that. And just one other thing I think is missing here, and I hope that some of these young guys can pick up and capitalize on current events to the advantage and benefit of the people. When Spectrum City was out and Chuck D was coming on the radio, the Delphi radio station, okay, he had all these songs that he was doing. He was rapping. And somebody, it was actually Hank Shockley, the producer, who had this little beatbox, and they'd be playing a little scratching, and he'd be rapping. I mean, he just keeps kicking out lyrics. I mean, I know one of the songs right now, I've never been on the radio, and I can do it. Then I come down here in 87, and I'm like, what is this something? Wait a minute. I thought my cassette was playing from when I used to tape the radio show, but it was his song was playing on Power 99, okay? And
Lady B Street Beats.
yeah,
Okay. That's the only thing we had back then.
and they changed. It wasn't Spectrum City anymore. Chuck D and them was calling themselves Public Enemy, and they were talking about the things that were going on, the injustice that was going on, the individuals that car broke down and he's going to the pizza place and the Italian guys are chasing him across the Belt Parkway in New York and he gets hit, and the sham trials and Eleanor Bumpers and all these people that were killed by police. They're rapping about these things that's going on and bringing it to the world's attention. Now you have a situation where you have things that's going on in social media that's even easier for people to find out about, that people could rap about, discuss, and talk, and that's not going on. If it is,
but I think it goes back to what Mark was saying. Is that again? It's being controlled by the content that's going to go out and hit the airwaves, that's going to be promoted and pushed, are controlled by the record companies, and those record executives are about making the money. And quite frankly, you wonder with the lyrical content and the things that's being said, they know that it's detrimental. They know that it has an effect on communities of color, but they don't stop it because it's bringing in money. And what they do is, if you look at a lot of these artists right now, I just laugh because I said, right now we have the benefit, and I know you've gone to them, and we probably all going to them. It's always in the wintertime. It was up in Atlantic City, the old school hip hop concert.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so you can go up there, and man, you were seeing last time I went, you seeing all the old school rap artists, and each one of them, when you look at them come on stage, they all had at least 4 or 5, if not more, albums that they put out. They, back then. Now, what it looks like is happening to me is you have record companies that are saying, okay, man, come in, okay, that's hot. You get your one album, or you may get your couple songs, and then, you know what, you pushed off to the stage because now we on to the next one, who's saying basically the same thing that this one said here. And so I just don't think that, the record industry is really caring, or nor do they want to hear rap or hip hop that is of substance.
But you're an artist.
This is true.
So what do you do?
But it's very few people that can do it.
Let's clarify that. So first of all, I'm an artist because I want to be an artist. It's my therapy. It's something I would do, whether I will do till the day I die, because I enjoy to do it, right? At a time, it was something that I felt like I wanted to pursue. But as of now, I still write lyrics. I still make tracks, but at the end of the day, I'm not looking to be a hip hop artist, in today's culture. It's not what I'm trying to do, but I do it because I love to do it. But let me back up just for a second, right? So when we're talking and we're saying, in a situation where, artists are looking for a big label to pick them up. So let's go back to where business meets the art, right? So when business met the art changed a bit, right? And once the art changed, it became known that, okay, now this is a path for people to change their living situation, to change their family's living situation, right? And at that time, artists, the biggest thing was to get a record deal. You get a record deal, you made it, right?
That's true.
Currently, it's flipped on the other side, right? So all of these artists that we don't care to listen to, they're the ones that are getting sought out by the record labels, right? Because they need the record label just like the record label needs them. But in a social media society where you can put out your own music, you can do it in an instant by like pushing a switch. The artists that you hear of that we respect within the names of people from old school hip hop are artists that realized what the situation was. They said, okay, well, if I go over here, they're going to want me to be the Kendrick Lamar they want me to be. They're going to want me to be the J. Cole they want me to be. But I got all of this access to the people, right? So if I just keep on to this path, what's going to happen in the long run? They're going to be knocking on my door. So now it's not me knocking on the record label's door like, hey, I need you to give me this money. It's the record label saying, oh, shit, yo, sorry.
You can say that. You can say that.
It's the record label knocking on their door, beating their door down because they know this is something organic. This is real. This is something that the people feel. And so it's a paradigm shift where nowadays it's like if you're putting out records and you're shopping to get a record deal, it's probably not music I want to listen to. But if it's somebody that's doing a grassroots movement organically and the people feel it and you got the people in pocket, the world is yours.
The record company's coming after
well,
you.
And 9 times out of 10, you can say, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Well, here's the difference. Now, from me being in the music business some years ago, to speak on what you're talking about, back in the day, you had A&Rs, artist recruiters from the record label companies. You were looking to get signed on a label. Internet comes out. Internet been out for a while. But, just like you said, you don't need a record company nowadays.
There's no art's not good.
That's the thing. You don't need that. You have social media, YouTube, all these different platforms. There's no need for a record company. Because just like you said, you can do your own thing. That changed the game completely. Completely changed the game.
But it's saturated now.
But here's the thing. Here's the difference. Like I said, going back to his point, back to Mark's point, whereas though you have the artist, he puts out something hot on his own, and he can do it on his own. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram.
World Star.
Whatever the case may be.
Right.
Guess what? If it's hot enough people start looking and gravitating to it, the record companies, now you're right. They come look for you.
Correct.
But at that point, you really like, I don't need you. I could do my own
But
thing.
let me ask you a question because I don't know. If you're doing your own thing like that and you're putting it out on YouTube and social media and so forth, and say you have a lot of followers and all that, are you making the money, the same money that a record company can offer you?
It depends on how smart you are with your craft, with your business. So
right now it's mostly streaming, and you got to have so much stream.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Download streams to equal. Depends on who you're streaming with.
So you can fact check this, but I'm not a fan. But I don't knock anybody. I don't knock anybody's hustle, anybody's art. But I'm sure we've all heard of Lil Uzi Vert, right? Mm-hmm. So he had a song. I can't think of the title of the song right now off the top of the head, but it came out maybe a year or two ago. It wasn't a song on an album. It wasn't attached to any project. The song did over, I think it was almost a billion streams, right? He hadn't had any of the business aspect of the song, solidified prior to, and he ended up making $900,000 off that song. Now, granted, that sounds like a lot of money to somebody who doesn't have money, but at the end of the day, when you stream 1 billion times, when you don't control that revenue, you get the crumbs. You get whatever's left, right? So that's the difference. It's just like right now, yes, the internet is there. Anybody can get hot in an instant, right? But you're not gonna build your stock with a record company coming to talk to you until you can show that you can reproduce that over and over again. And I think the greats that we know of, that we talk about in this current era, I know we're supposed to be talking about old school hip hop, but in this current era, the greats that we consider greats were the ones who were able to reproduce great art over and over again until the point where the labels came knocking at that door. Some of the cats, it's not too hard to make a hot record, but can you do it over and over again? Yeah. Can you do it? Can you transcend generations? Can you transcend different current event topics that are going on currently, still be relevant and still be hot? And I think the ones that are able to make a quick hot record and realize, okay, I'm in over my head, they're the ones knocking at the record exec's door to get these 360 deals where they're put into a deal where they're making peanuts. You're advanced, you get this advance, you ain't got no money, but once you got this advance, now you're looking back at the bills. 9 times out of 10, you don't have any type of financial advisor. Now, all this money you thought you had, you went out and spent. Well, yeah, the record label gave you this deal, but now you're paying for studio time. You're paying for, your tour bus. You're paying for all of this out of the advance they're giving you. So at the end of the day, you have no money.
So it's almost like a circle where you're circling around. You're doing something, and you're not doing something that falls off, and then the music is progressing, and then a lot of people are just falling behind and left behind. It's just different things now. So these mumbling guys, they're Fetty Wap, he's a mumbler. Future, I don't know if he changed up his style. Is Future a mumbler?
So I'm not a fan of Future. I would say that he would be categorized as a mumble rapper.
Okay.
As far as artists, I feel you should always be true to yourself, right? So Future is someone who comes from a pretty solid background, and he promotes things like doing drugs that, pretty much the whole hip-hop culture knows that he doesn't do. So you're selling lies to our kids, and I'm not cool with that.
Was that the Molly song?
Yeah, Molly Percocet,
okay, yeah,
but
yeah.
it goes further than that. He talks about it all the time, but it's known throughout the hip-hop industry that he doesn't actually do that. So he's...
Ain't that something?
Yeah.
I would have thought that he did.
Yeah, you would have, right?
That's why you got to tell these young people, don't listen to all that stuff and believe that they're telling you the truth.
I think, to be fair, old school hip hop, you had some artists who did the same thing.
Well, yeah, I know.
So,
they just talked about
you don't have
how they pull the women.
Okay,
they
you don't have a mansion.
It doesn't affect someone's life.
Right. You don't have a mansion. You don't have a pool. You don't have a $1 million car. The guy's living in an apartment in Brooklyn somewhere. And working down at the corner
car
store.
wash.
Yeah, or the car
Let me tell you
wash.
something.
And
Nothing's
you
changed.
got song
Nothing's changed.
That's what I said,
To this day, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed.
But nobody was. You didn't have to worry about somebody getting hurt listening to that. Granted, there's some people that don't have socially or or their upbringing is such that they have those restrictors that would prevent them from just trying things and doing things because so-and-so says it on the song. So, I just really, this Fetty Wap or Future and these guys, when I hear them, it's like, oh man, I can't get with that. And then I've actually seen or read some blog statements where, some guy come out, oh, you old head cats, man, y'all don't know what y'all talking about, and, y'all just, you think everybody,
Y'all just hate.
All I say is put side by side, take the music out of it, give me a notepad, and you put down the lyrics of of our generation, and you put it next to the lyrics of these generations right now, and you tell me what the difference.
You can't.
Even if they just talking. I mean, and even if they're just talking, even like with Biggie was to me, he was like a guy that was in the middle because Biggie was talking the street stuff, but Biggie did a lot of bragging and boasting on himself about being the baddest rapper. He was one of those guys.
He still came up in the essence of battle rap.
Yeah, he did exactly. He did.
But these guys now they don't know what a battle is. To me, a battle is you're in a circle. You have a microphone.
The cipher, baby.
And you have a microphone, and you go back and forth. Okay? What I didn't like during the East Coast, West Coast war was I heard Snoop say, okay, let me put out a record, and you put out a record, and we'll see who sells the most, with the fans. Now, the so-called West Coast style back then catered more to, they had the slower tempo, the easier flow, and that was
R&B type of groove.
And that was preferred with people in the South and the Southwest and in the West Coast. And then you had this guy from New York, and he's limited to New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, and
Philly.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And that's it. And that's what you can't. You can't battle somebody with the fans and say, okay, X amount of records sold here and X amount.
You got to get in the ring.
Get in the ring, and then let the DJ play something and give me a beat, and then just go ahead. To me, that's what a battle is.
No, I agree with you.
That's exactly
Okay.
what a battle is, right? I mean, and when you look at battle rap, back in the early forms of battle, it was on the street corners. It was two cats, and really, if you look at the state of battle rap currently, that's where it came from. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Smack DVD, but Smack is a individual who's been basically trying to glorify the hip hop culture for quite a while now. But he started with a circuit of DVDs, and on the end of every Smack DVD there'd be a battle, and there'd be a battle between usually two cats from New York or a cat from Philly, and they'd be in like a sneaker store somewhere,
Okay.
and they're just going back and forth, no beat, no nothing, just a crowd around them going back and forth. That's transpired into something bigger than they probably ever thought it would be, because the state of battle rap right now, battle rappers are getting 10, 15 grand for a win in battle rap currently,
Okay.
but it's totally outside of what hip hop is currently. So now you have mainstream hip hop, you have underground hip hop, you got battle rappers, and it's like it's like one hand doesn't know what the other's doing because they're all in separate lanes.
And they can't. It's hard for a battle rapper or some battle rappers to
break
cross
in
over
exactly
into that.
Exactly.
And that's what happened to Cannabis, because Cannabis, this guy named Cannabis. Okay, so Cannabis.
When he battled LL back in the day,
he would say things that were, just ridiculous, just totally ridiculous. You want to rewind it back and listen to it, and he was out around the same time that DMX came out.
Yep.
And but DMX was crushing everybody.
Yeah, DMX was bad
came
boy.
out with
He was bad boy.
3 albums back to back,
Yeah.
and then just crushed that.
yeah,
Just
but
three-
DMX had a long road
yeah,
before that.
he
long
was just
road
crushing.
before that.
So here you have DMX, Cannabis is coming out, and he was doing good on the mixtapes and stuff like that. But then he went at L, and see L can go and battle, which
He can.
Okay, so but then he tried to put out some albums to compete with L, and he couldn't do it. And then all of a sudden, when then they started going song to song, L was crushing them. And the next thing you know, you ain't hear nothing from Cannabis. I don't even know what Cannabis.
So I tell you,
got smoked.
Hey, remember that tape that used to go around LL? Man, he was up at the club in Philly, and he was rapping. Oh man, what club was he in? Man, it was he was young then, man. I'm like I think I was still in high school, and he came up. Oh man, I can't even think of the club, man. I used to have that thing. Yo, man, he got on the mic and he was rapping to "It's Yours." Remember
Okay.
"It's
Yeah,
Yours"?
yeah, It's Yours. Yeah.
T-La Rock, wasn't it? "It's Yours," but they was playing that beat. Man, LL went on for like 20 minutes straight, man. I mean, he crushed it. I mean, just straight up. I'll pay money for that. If I could get my hands on that right now, I'll pay money for it.
It's
But
somewhere.
he was. I mean, it was unreal.
Probably online.
Yeah, it probably is. I can't think of the club he was at, man.
So let me
What you gonna
pose
say about
propose
Cannabis?
a question to y'all.
Oh, okay.
No. So for instance, you were saying you don't know what's happened to Cannabis since
Right.
then. But a funny story, probably maybe 2 years ago, Cannabis, building his brand as a battle rapper. That's what he was back then because of this famous battle with LL. He decided he wanted to take on one of the youngsters that's in battle rap currently.
Okay.
And got totally embarrassed. It was
Oh,
sad.
he did?
Oh, you should look it up. Look up on your phone when you get a chance.
All right.
Look up Cannabis battle such and such. If it was in the last 5 years, you'll see the battle I'm talking about.
right.
He choked on stage, pulled out a pen and a pad, and was reading his raps. Like I'm talking about, it's a crowd of 20,000 people.
He was never like
it
that,
was
though.
bad. It was bad.
Oh, dang, that's why we get old.
But for somebody that respects knowledge and wisdom, for what you guys have witnessed in the last decade of hip hop, and without mentioning the few names that we've all agreed on that kind of transcend what we respect as hip hop material or quality art, what do you see as the next step to bring hip hop a little closer to its essence?
Okay. I think that some people, my point before, I think that some smart guys are watching what's going on the world stage with what's going on in this country, and there's some people that they have they have their fingers on the pulse of what's happening in the streets as far as how people feel about law enforcement, how they feel about voting, and everything that, even coronavirus. And there's people that those guys that are able to capitalize on that and express themselves lyrically with good production. I think that will be the next trend. Now, again, we go back to Mr. V's point and your point with the powers that be. And if they're controlling all this stuff, then that's going to be sequestered. And all we're going to get is the trash and the garbage. I'm going to get more Cardi B on my radio, Shake Your Booty, and I'm going to get some more shooting. Okay, I'm riding down the street. I got my clips and the shells flying and all that kind of stuff. Stuff of no substance. But I think that if people really capitalize on it, I think that would be the next trend, or what could really go back to the essence of hip hop. And musically, graffiti is always here with us, okay, as far as the art is concerned. But there's like graffiti that you see that's in the cities around here, and the guys that are doing it don't look like they know anything about hip hop.
Correct.
They just, it's a guy that you wouldn't even think he would know anything. All right, and I know some of these guys, and a lot of them are into just art that happens to be graffiti. Mm-hmm. And if I went and said, hey man, do you know that this is an element of hip hop? They wouldn't know that. All right, they don't have no idea about that. But that is a form of it. So I don't see that as being a resurgence. That's just something that exists. Breakdancing, or the essence of breakdancing, that I don't think that'll ever die. Because there's guys now that's doing this guy named James Floatable. Yeah. They're doing things now that would, where I would go out and I wouldn't even, if I was 16 now maybe, but dance in and of itself evolves, and I think that's always going to be with us. I'm just really concerned about the music. That's what I'm concerned about.
I think the beauty of it is that we all know that history repeats itself, right? So you're gonna see a resurgence of some of the things you've seen. It may not be in the same form, but you're gonna see certain things. But I would advise to be wary of it, because I think there's a lot of gimmicks when it comes to the music industry currently, right? And as a person, who grew up still respecting the old school, coming up kind of in the 80s, 90s, which I will boast and say I feel is the best lyrical age of hip hop.
When the 80s and 90s?
Late 80s, yeah. early to middle 90s. I don't think anyone was spitting bars like that, but that was at a time where, the whole idea of hip hop was more centered on the MC, right? Yeah. But we're going to leave that alone.
Except for 90 and 91 and 92.
What you mean?
Come on now.
Who?
What you mean?
Me, Tone Loc and Vanilla Ice. Come on, man.
Remember what we spoke about earlier? When you talk about people who can make a hit and they just made that hit? That doesn't make you an artist, But for somebody that really cares about the state of hip hop currently, right? I would challenge anyone that's looking for the essence of hip-hop and what's going on currently to not conform to what's being spoon-fed to you. Not listen to your radio, because it's hip-hop out there. It's good hip-hop out there. It's good art out there right now. It's not what you're going to hear on your radio. It's not what you're going to see in social media, reposted 16, 17 times. But it's artists out there. And when you look recently, like rest in peace to Nip, but Nipsey had that vision. He had that vision of ownership, right? I know my art. I'm going to make my art regardless of who likes it or who doesn't. I know I have a following. I'm speaking to them. And as that following grows, then if somebody wants to throw some money my way, and he never took it because he got to a point where he controls so much by just keeping the money in-house and being able to have his own creative control to the point where he didn't need it, right? And lots of the people that you hear on the radio or that you're seeing in posts or seeing here or there, these are the people that didn't have that ability. They're the people that made a hit, saw it as an opportunity, took the first bidder that threw some money their way, and now they're a household name. But that's not hip hop. That's not what hip hop is. Hip hop is the struggle. Hip hop is the essence of, doing something at a time that it wasn't even a business. Hip hop wasn't a business. No. It was an expression.
Yeah.
And to this day, me being 36, but knowing that, I look for artists now that are expressing how they feel. They're giving me art. I want to feel it. If it's some bubblegum, cookie cutter, yada yada mumble raps, I don't want to hear it. I'm going to hear it. You're going to hear it. Mm-hmm. You can't help but to hear it.
Yeah,
it's going to be on the radio 4 times a day.
Right.
But I wonder.
But
I
don't
wonder
classify that as hip hop.
Search
for the real.
Then that's rap.
But now you feel that way. You're 36. You feel that way. But my concern is, what about the young people that are coming up now? Do they know any difference? Do they even listen to, or try to listen to any of the old school, or is what they've been exposed to and what they're dealing with right now? That's all they know.
I think the burden's on us, though.
Yeah. So how do you? I know I tried. Like I said, I tried to put it on, and I'm surprised now. My daughters, they listen to a lot of old school R&B. They like it, which it shocks me. But as far as the hip hop goes, they don't. They don't. I tell them all the time. I say, I'll give you all this. I think that back in the day, our beats were very, very basic. Back in the day, you didn't have a lot of this, huh?
They made you move.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
They made you move.
So I say this. I think that they have. The beats now, because of technology and computers and all that stuff, it's a lot. It's better, but that's the only thing. That's the only thing that's better. Is that? That's it.
I as a dad, I irritate my kids constantly with what I used to listen to the point that when my wife had that flat tire and you came out, and I was changing the tire. Okay, this is what I did to irritate my daughter.
I said an M-A-S.
A T-E-R.
I'm laying on the ground, okay, because I'm trying to put the jack up under there. I'm laying on the ground, fixing, working on a flat tire, rapping to irritate my daughter. Okay, she knows this. She knows this song.
But that's good.
Okay,
that's good, right? Like my son right now, he's 7 years old, and he's a gamer, right? Wants to start his own YouTube gaming channel. And I say, you should be outside playing basketball, throwing a football, doing something. But I gotta understand that that's a lane. That's a lane currently, and there is some skill involved. Yes. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of marketing that goes on behind the scenes, right? So he plays Fortnite, and on Fortnite, Travis Scott, who's a current hip hop artist, right?
Whoa.
Those were air quotes, just to give you a visual.
Yeah, because
hip-hop
it's not YouTube.
I'm not taking nothing away. I'm not taking nothing away from his grind. I'm not taking nothing away from the grind, the hustle. But at the end of the day, he doesn't move me as a lyricist. Let's put that out there. But he's a brilliant marketer. On Fortnite, he did a virtual show where there's a 40-foot version of him rapping to kids. My kid didn't have a clue who Travis Scott was before that, right? Marketing. Now, my son knows who Wu-Tang is. My son knows who Rakim is, not because he listens to it, but because I'm like, look, you want to listen to rap, this is what you're going to listen to.
Yeah, right.
But at the end of the day, I'm like, look, you're not going to listen to this and not know where it came from.
Right.
So, I understand that it's always going to be an evolution, and it's never going to really match what it was originally, but there has to be some sort of similarity or some sort of homage or respect to what it was prior, or I feel like the art gets lost.
Yeah, but he'll get that from you.
Yeah,
it's that fruit that's falling down. He's going to be able to pick it up. But I really want to ask you, who is your favorite Wu-Tang artist?
Who's my favorite?
Yes.
Ooh, that's tough, bro.
No, just give me one.
So if I had to pick one, and I'm a person that's huge on lyricism, and I don't feel like he might be the most sharp lyrically out of the Wu. But how'd you know, bro? How'd you know? That's my guy, bro. No,
Okay.
but no, for real, Ghost, Dak, freaking Rakim. I mean, they're interchangeable, bro. Like the Woo is the Woo. I mean, I see them as a unit. I mean, I'm a huge Outkast fan. To the day I die. So past that East-West battle that we were talking about earlier, there was also a North-South battle. The South was blackballed to a point where nobody wanted to hear what they had to say, and the South has produced so many good artists.
Except in New York, at a certain point in time, in the summertime, there would be a breakout Southern artist that would be played, but it wasn't. They weren't taken seriously.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like I think everybody was leveling for position, right?
Okay.
So, for instance.
Oh, okay, that's what it was. Okay.
For instance, I know you heard the record, Big Pimpin', Jay-Z, and it was UGK, Bun B and Pimp C. Pimp C, rest in peace, Pimp C, right? So, if you ever hear Pimp C tell the or Bun B, either or tell the story, they'll tell you, Pimp C, he wanted nothing to do with that record because he was so big on what the South had going on, and they had been blackballed so long because nobody wanted to give him a listen. He was like, we've been doing this whole time. We don't need them. I don't want to do a record with Jay-Z because it looks like I'm doing this record with Jay-Z just to get my name. Nah, he didn't want that. But Bun B, who basically coerced him or convinced him to do it. But the South for a long time was pushed out of that box because that hip hop started in New York, right? Started in New York, the West got a hold of it, and they had that whole struggle. But the whole time throughout that, the East and West, the South really felt there was a different situation, and they were. The South was a totally different sound. Like when you listen to Goody Mob from back in the day, even listen to 8 Ball and MJG, what's your boys from Memphis, 3-6 Mafia, Project Pat, like. They were rapping. It might not have sounded exactly like the beats and the lyrics you were hearing from East Coast rappers or West Coast rappers, but that's the beauty of hip hop. If it's not original, it's not art, right? And I think so many times the business of it is looking to replicate something that they've heard before instead of searching for something within the same genre that's new, right? That's never been heard before. And that's when you really start to hear art. So like when you look back in the day, when you look at the Run DMCs, when you look at, old school hip hop groups, that was uncharted territory, right? Now we're looking at, fast forward to 2020, there's been a lot of replication. But the only thing we respect is what doesn't fit into the mold, what stands us apart from what you've heard before. And that's what we're going to continue to call art for years and years to come. Unfortunately, currently, I feel as though not so often can you say that, okay, this really sets itself apart from what I've heard before. Because when you listen to new school artists that really are conscious, and it's not even really about being conscious, but really you can feel the art. You know that it's not fabricated, right? When you hear that, you know it. You don't have to ask yourself a question. And when and I know what we were talking about before, how we were talking about I got 15 cars outside. There's a lot of cap that goes with it, but the baseline, as long as the baseline is true to oneself, anybody will recognize it. Anybody will feel it.
Uncle Luke and the 2 Live Crew.
What about them?
All right.
One of the greatest movements ever.
You have these guys existing all the way down to Florida. And I don't think they were too complex with their beats, but they made their own empire down there doing that. And they existed in their own bubble, so to speak, while everything else, what we were dealing with going on,
True.
late 80s, early 90s. These guys were down there doing their thing.
They were doing numbers.
Okay, I mean, he was that Miami bass sound.
had it, yeah.
They was running that. They were running it, and all they did, that origin came from that Miami bass sound came
The 808s.
from.
It was the 808s going crazy.
It came, and they were working that, and they were running with that. Like I was at a restaurant the other night. We were down at the beach, and I was listening to it was some Spanish music, but the beat from this particular type of Spanish music came from a Shabba Ranks reggae song.
Reggaeton.
You know,
reggaeton.
it's just it's from a reggae song.
Yeah.
But these Spanish artists, they take that beat, okay, they took that beat, and that's theirs now.
Yeah.
It's a whole genre, and I'm sitting there listening, and it was one song after another. I mean, it was just killing it. And I'm sitting there like, man, you know, I said to the waiter, I said, oh, so you waited for the old folks to leave, and now you playing all this right here, and he started laughing. But these artists are able to, you know, to take a piece of something, capitalize on it, and then utilize it for themselves, and they don't need to collaborate with others. They can do it and exist in their bubble, make money in their space.
They don't need validation from no one.
And have respect in their own world.
What does that remind you of? That doesn't remind you of the essence of hip hop?
Oh, well,
when we're taking records that have been created,
right.
looping the break, and doing your own thing. And
that's a good point.
But that's the beauty of it. That's what hip hop is. As long as you're doing something that's original, right? If it's you, and you might know 5 people that know you, but now you've introduced you to the world, it's gonna be different. I don't care what you say, or it ain't you,
right?
Because there ain't another you on earth. So regardless of what happens, as long it's always gonna be sampling. It's always gonna be people taking sounds, taking syncopations, as far as, you know, how people spit lyrics. It's always gonna be that. But at the end of the day, as long as the lyrics behind it, the content is unadulterated, somebody's gonna feel it.
Cameron,
What about him?
how you feel about him?
So I got a love-hate relationship with Cameron. So I'm gonna tell you, Cameron at his essence, I rock with Cameron. I like Cameron's movement through the Dipset movement. I feel as though Cameron did what Jay-Z did with some of his artists. So I don't know if you know, but Jay-Z had an artist on state property, young Chris. It was Chris and Neef. And Chris had remember when Jay-Z started to go, he stole that from Chris. Okay. But Jay-Z had a place in the game where he could do it, and it was Jay-Z's now, right? So Cameron, I enjoyed Cameron. First 2 albums, Come Home With Me was a monster, right? And even after he started doing some old sideways crazy stuff, I still rock with Cameron. But there was an artist he signed called J.R. Ryder, who had a very fast-paced, repeat syllables over and over again, but never repeat a word. And it was really catchy, right? And you could see Cameron's style from where he originated when he got with JR and signed JR to his camp, and you hear Cameron start writing these rhymes, and that's when you started getting things like this. I get computers putin'. Now tell me what that means.
Gets things going.
What the fuck is... Oh, sorry.
You say that, bro.
What does putin' mean?
Right, but
Is he talking about Vladimir?
But
like, what's putin'?
He's using a word and turning it into a vowel.
True.
And that doesn't exist.
I give you that.
To the point where you can formulate it in your brain.
It's a little stretch for me though.
Yeah, but I
rock with Cam. I rock with Cam.
Okay.
I do.
Did you like the horror rap genre that was going on? Because I think you mentioned Grave Diggers, and it was a trend, and I'm riding in the '90s with you right now. So I'm.
So when you look at Grave Diggers, you look at Boot Camp Click, you look at Sons of Man, you look at groups like that. They all inhabited the same circles, and they all were kind of that same cloth as the Wu. So when the Wu was the foundation, and then you got all of these other groups that And to tell you the truth, knowing my history, there would be no Wu without the R, right? Rakim put the science on the track. Rakim would if it wasn't for Rakim, there would be no Wu-Tang, right? And so knowing my history, now granted I got Wu-Tang first, but once I started, learning the history and getting my understanding of the knowledge behind it, I went back and listened to the R. I'm like, oh, he should have been in Wu-Tang. You know what I mean? Because it's that same vibe, it's that same science, but they did it differently.
Of being a 5%er and introducing
but it's not. It is the 5%, but it's not just about the 5%, but it's about bringing the science and the mathematics to hip hop and being able to speak about it. And the beauty of Wu-Tang is, and lots of artists I love, if I can't listen to you 10 years later and catch something I didn't catch 10 years ago, we got a problem. I want something if that's timeless. When something is timeless, when you hear it again 10 years ago, especially with the genre of hip hop,
right?
You can't. I want to have to decode the bars. That's why when I told you Ghostface is my favorite, because half the time when I first listen to a Ghostface verse, I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
Right.
But it makes me want to find out what he's talking about.
It's very complex, and he's
and it might sound
he's
crazy.
Giving you some little bits and pieces to put that bar together, and you might just go with it as far as what he said.
It rhymed.
Right.
But do you understand what he's saying?
But then you have to go back at some point, and then you start to parse through what is said, and then it might be a time where you don't even hear it, and you might be washing your car and it's playing,
and it catches you.
Hold up, did he just say that? And then you rewind it back, and then I can't believe that, because that happened to me. That happened to me where I forgot what I was listening to, but he said something, and the whole time he'd been saying it, but it was the first time.
You never caught on to it.
I was like, oh snap, he said that. So for me, coming out of the '80s, there was, I'm thoroughly immersed in New York rap, because that was just my existence. But there was a time as we're coming out of the '80s, and I was heavily into dancehall reggae, and I mean I'm more into reggae than anything. But coming in and going to the '90s, and I mentioned, like I said, that for me 90, 91, 92 was just bad years, and then we started to come out of '93, Black Moon. Then Biggie was coming out, and then, we having these guys, and Smith and Wesson and all this. Yeah. There was an ebb and flow. So for me, coming in '93 to '97, '98, that was like a golden period for me. Now, mind you,
definitely,
I'm working my job. Been working my job for about 4 or 5 years, and I'd be sitting in my car, and it could be a Friday night, and I'm not busy, and I'm just on the radio. I got a mixtape in, and one time my supervisor, we were going somewhere. He was behind me. He said, "Do you have to nod your head that hard when you listen?" I didn't even realize it.
Absolutely.
I'm sitting in my car. I'm leaned over to the side, and I'm just like, yeah. I'm just hyped up. I mean, that period of time. I still got the tape. I got tubs of mixtapes, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, 90. And then I discovered through my wife, Baltimore. And they started playing that on the radio, and it's not rap. It's Baltimore Club, but I'm watching out for the big girls, and they got this beat, and I'm like, what is this? What's up with the big girl? Baltimore, Jersey. No, it's
big girls need love too.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. I'm gonna stop you right there, because now you're giving them too much. This got to be a part 2. We're gonna have to do a part 2 on this. You know what I'm saying? Because what we got going, we got to meet up. We got to do this once a month, folks. If you're listening out here, we're gonna bring this in. We're gonna do this once a month. We're gonna rock on roll on Smoke World. That's how we gonna do it. Y'all giving them too much right now. Y'all giving way too much. We want them to come back.
We can do this all night.
Exactly. We want them to come back and rock and roll. Anybody, I'm gonna let you close it out. What you want to say on the close out, bro?
We're
gonna give them part 2 on this.
Yeah, I just what? Just whatever your music is, just enjoy it, appreciate it, collect it, and spread it if you can. Share it with others who are willing to listen and just enjoy it, whatever that is.
How about you, V?
And I'm just sitting here amazed by the knowledge. And as I
Yeah,
told
you
I
too.
said
Man,
these
you-
right here, like, yo, these two
These
right
cat-
here, historians,
This two
man.
right
you
here
know,
is
I'm
for the
telling
peoples
you.
in the streets.
So, I'm just happy. I'm happy to hear it, man. I'm happy to hear the conversation, man, and learning a lot about this. So,
education.
Yeah. That's what's up, man. I'm enjoying this right here, and just reminiscing and thinking about just the old school and back in the
back in the
80s.
day.
Yeah, back in the day, man, with the old school hip hop and seeing the young fella. He only 36, so he ain't no but a little kid, to me. So it's good to hear his perspective and to see that that he's a young man who understands the importance of looking back at history and paying attention to that to see how you got to this point where you are right now.
Absolutely.
Whether it be in hip hop or any other aspect of
You
it.
gotta know where you coming from to know where you're going, right? But I would just leave you with this, like for everyone that is from the first generation, second generation of hip hop. Don't give up on hip hop. I'm gonna leave you with that. Like, don't give up on hip hop. There's plenty of good art out there. It's just it might not be as tangible as the stuff that we're quick to say, hey, I don't want to listen to this, right? I don't want my daughter to listen to this, right? But at the end of the day, it's still out there. Don't give up on it. It's still alive and well. And I'm going to say peace to everybody. It's all love, always.
Look, fellas, Mark, V, Vince, I appreciate y'all being guests on Smoke World. Look, folks, you heard it here. It's going to be a part 2 to this thing. I appreciate y'all listening. Y'all stay tuned for the next one. Peace.